First, I want to thank Rayon, the team, the board, all the great people at EPI for the work you do. Incredibly important work. You're the lobbyists, you're the folks that can't afford lobbyists. You are the folks that speak truth to power always. And your work informs decision-making and policy-making in the state always. Since the early 1920s, the United States has been identified as one of the nations that falls under the descriptive umbrella as a liberal democracy. So to quickly define a liberal democracy in basic terms, it is a nation where the people have the right to vote in free, fair, and secure elections, where the losing candidates and parties in those elections accept the results, participate in the peaceful transfer of power, and move on to fight the battle of ideas on another day. Liberal democracies are places where there is a definitive separation of powers, a system of checks and balances, and an independent judiciary. It is a place where the people's rights are constitutionally guaranteed, and those who hold the minority point of view do not lose those rights just because they've lost an election. It is a place where free speech is protected, a free press is essential, and the law is applied equally to all without prejudice. That should all sound very familiar to you, or as Dr. King would have said, I am sure somewhere I read. These concepts are highlighted in the principles outlined in the Declaration of Independence and the preamble to and body of the United States Constitution. However, today, out of the 195 countries in the world, only 29 can be categorized as liberal democracies. Just a short 15 years ago, there were 44 countries categorized as liberal democracies. And today, liberal democracies have become the rarest form of government on earth. Democratic backsliding continues to happen across the globe, and unfortunately here at home. The great civil rights leader and Congressman John Lewis said, democracy is not a state, it is an act, and each generation must do its part to preserve it. In the last two presidential elections, only 65% of eligible Americans cast a vote. That number plummets to below 50% in midterm elections. This should be alarming to all of us. Far too many of our citizens have become bystanders. Far too many of our citizens have become jaded by the nature of our politics. Far too many citizens believe that their vote doesn't matter, that politicians are all the same, and that nothing will ever change. It's understandable, of course, but this disenchantment, this apathy, allow those who are not committed to the principle of liberal democracy to fill that void. All other rights emanate from the right to vote. The right to vote is an essential right. Our nation could use a collective lesson on the history of voting rights in America. A lesson I have now given over 100 times across the state's public, private, and parochial high schools over the course of the last 3 years. How do we know that our vote matters? Because our history tells us it does. Continuous national movements of everyday people fighting for justice and equality during challenging times, more challenging than today, and in difficult environments have forced significant changes to the Constitution and the law of the land in order to move the nation on its desired path toward a more perfect union. Imagine telling the clear majority of Americans who in the late 1860s, who experienced a bitter civil war and then demanded their representatives pass and their states ratify the 15th Amendment, guaranteeing the right to vote to former slaves. Imagine telling them that their vote didn't matter. Or dismissing out of hand the great suffragettes of the early 20th century and demanded that the 19th Amendment be ratified, guaranteeing women's rights to vote. Imagine telling them all politicians are the same and nothing will ever change. Imagine telling the young people of the 1960s and early 1970s who convinced their parents and the nation that if you are sent off to war as an 18-year-old, You should be able to vote for or against the politician who made that decision. Imagine telling them that their efforts to pass the 26th Amendment to lower the voting age from 21 to 18 was a waste of time because their vote didn't matter. The system was rigged. Nothing ever changes. On March 7th of 1965, 25-year-old John Lewis was beaten by Alabama state troopers on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma during a peaceful voting rights march. That bridge was named for a Confederate general and the Grand Wizard of the KKK. The kicking and repeated blows from the billy club resulted in a fractured skull, a severe concussion, and multiple lacerations. John Lewis later recalled that he was sure he was going to die on that bridge on that bloody Sunday. Imagine what emotions he must have experienced and what he must have been thinking, lying on the ground in a pool of his own blood, looking left and seeing women beaten, to his right seeing clergy beaten by the government, men who took an oath to uphold the Constitution, to protect and serve. It must have been one of the darkest moments of his young life. Would this country that he loved so much, that he was willing to fight and die for, would this country ever love him back? But you know what he did? He got up. He got up. He stood up. He continued to march. And on August 6th of 1965, just 5 months after John Lewis lay bleeding on that bridge, the Voting Rights Act was passed. And in my opinion, the Voting Rights Act is when we became a liberal democracy. It is when American democracy was born in 1965 because it became an inclusive democracy. Imagine having the audacity to tell John Lewis that his vote didn't matter, that all politicians are the same, that nothing ever changes. The right to vote is the greatest right because all other rights are dependent on it. So when you get discouraged, think of John Lewis on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and organize and teach and vote. Thank you.